All right, now we are getting into Unit 5, which is on chemical equations. In the first part of that, we're going to do two parts of this PowerPoint, but we're doing balancing equations first. And our goal for this learning target 5.1 is to differentiate between reactants and products and to balance chemical equations. So make sure that you're taking notes throughout this presentation, but first we're starting off with reactants versus products. Reactants are what you put into the reaction, and products are what you get out of the reaction. So this is like the input, and this is like the result. So the reactants in the real world would be something like flour, eggs, sugar, and these ingredients here. And a product would be like a cake. So this is a chemical reaction right here. This is what they look like. We have a reactant side and a product side. Go ahead and copy this down in your notes, underline the reactants, and then circle the products. All right, since we read everything left to right and our reactants are what we put in, these are our reactants over here, and this is telling us what we are yielding or what we are ending with. So this is our product over here. We only have one product and we have two reactants. So the whole reason that we do this is because of the law of conservation of matter. This is a law that says the amount that you put into an equation, so the reactants, must equal the amount of the things that come out, the products, because matter cannot be created or destroyed. That means we have a fixed or a set amount of matter, amount of atoms in the world, and we can't create or destroy new matter. But those atoms can be rearranged, and that is how we show this in our equations. Something that's really important to note is going to be this term called coefficients. The coefficients are shown in blue here. We have 2 in this equation. They are the numbers that go in front of the compound. They tell us how many of each thing we have, and if there's not a number here, that's just assumed to be a number 1. We multiply these by any subscripts, like here we have 1 subscript, so we would multiply this 1 times this 2 to tell us our amount of bromine. And these are what help us balance the equation. If there's not a number in front, we have to assume it's 1. So let's go ahead and try to balance one. So if we have this equation here, our first step is to determine the number of each element and the reactants in the product side. So let's go ahead and in your notes, make this chart. We have reactants and we have products. That's what my R and P stand for. And I have 2 things in this reaction. I have Fe, iron, and I have O2, or oxygen. So I have Fe and I have O. Those are the only things I have in here. On my reactant side, my irons, I have 1. On my product side, I have 2 irons. I have 2 oxygens on my reactant side, and I have 3 on my product side. Seeing that we have uneven numbers on our reactants and our product side of both of our components, we have to use coefficients to balance out the number of elements on each side. So we have to add some coefficients to balance these out. So I'm going to start by balancing out my irons. I like to go from left to right in this direction. So I'm going to start by balancing out my irons. If I add a 2 here, this would give me 2 irons on my reactant side and 2 on my product side. So this coefficient would help balance out my irons. Now looking at my oxygens, I have 2 over here, I have 3 over here. The way that I can balance those out is by adding a 2 here and a 3 here, making these numbers 6 and 6. But now since I added this 2 here, I have messed with my total of my ions. So I have to multiply these 2 now. So I actually have 4 irons on my reactants or my products side. So now what I can do is change this number to a 4. So I now have everything balanced. We are going to get lots and lots of practice with this, so let's go ahead and start off. I will walk us through this one, and then the next one I want you to try on your own. So, aluminum and iron and oxygen. Those are my things that I have in my reaction. I'm going to make this chart again. And on my aluminum side, I have 1 and 2. Go ahead and fill this out as you're following along with me. 1 and 3. So I see I have different aluminums and I have different oxygens. Starting off, I'm going to put a 2 here to balance out my aluminums. That's going to make it good. Then I have my irons that are all set, but my oxygens have a different amount. So I'm going to put a 3 here. So my oxygens are good. But now I've messed with this iron here, and I have 3 irons. If I put a 3 here, that will balance out my irons, and I'm all set. This is my answer. And I don't need anything here. I have a 1, but I don't need that. Go ahead and try with this one. First, remember, make your chart, and then go ahead and start filling it in and then balancing. Just checking in, this is what your chart should look like. Then moving forward, we have our carbons that are already balanced, so we don't really need to mess with those. Looking at my hydrogens, I've got 4 on my reactant side and 2 on my product side. So I'm going to add a 2, and then we multiply those 2's. So this becomes 4 hydrogens on my product side, balancing them out. Now I have 2 oxygens plus 2 oxygens, which is going to make this 4. So to balance that out, I need to add more to my reactant side, so I can just add a 2 here. And that would balance out my oxygens. Now this one is a challenge one. We have a polyatomic. Remember to treat the polyatomic as if it is one single thing. So don't split up the P and the O's. Just keep it together as PO4 and treat it as one thing. Go ahead and try and balance this. All right, so this is my chart if you're following along. So go ahead and start by balancing your K's, your potassiums. So my first step here is looking like it's gonna be adding a 3 right here. So I get 3 potassiums on this side. I can check them off. Then I've got my PO4s. I've got 2 over here, 1 over here. So if I go ahead and add a 2, then that makes me even. But since I've added a 2, I've messed with the potassiums total. So this 3 becomes 6. Now I have to make it 6 on my product side too. So I can just erase that and change it to a 6. Now my potassiums are good again. My PO4s are good. Looking at my magnesium, they're still unbalanced. So my magnesiums, I've got 1 over here, so I need to make this 3. 3 and 3, that's balanced. Now looking at my chlorines, I've got 6 over here and 6 over here. We're all set. This is my final balance equation. All right, everybody, nice job. Go ahead and write down any questions you have, and we will get to these at the beginning of class.